Dimensional Shades, a short story by Paul McCann. Our ship was making its way through the Earth's atmosphere. We were actually landing before we had originally taken off. Our projected place of landing was on an uninhabited island in the Pacific where we could gather our thoughts and make plans to enter back into civilization again. We landed the Noah 2 safely and opened up all of the hatches. How long had we been away was assumed to be at least 17 nuclear eons. I looked up and noticed that the sun shone in the sky, and so it was clear, and we returned to Earth before global warming had ever occurred. That was a long time ago for us all. I had read about the disasters on Earth when global warming began, but this was a time even before then. The island had trees, and the ocean was calm. I didn't want to waste time now that we had returned to Earth. I had to record everything I could about our journey on Noah 2 before time eroded it from my memory. I needed some space to think and asked the crew to collect some samples of the soil and any healthy plants. I also told them I needed some samples of the marine life around the island. While they were doing that, I settled back into my council chair and placed the mind implant disc on my temples and started to record all the details I could remember about the voyage. My name is Lara, leader of the human pioneer ship Noah 2. There are 144 of us on board. We come from an era known as the 7th Nuclear Drain, and I was chosen to be the leader of the mission. The crew and myself were to be the last members of the human race, and it was up to us to continue the species. We had to find and inhabit another planet somewhere in space that could sustain life. But now we have returned to a time long before any of us even existed. This is a past eon we are in. Our age was long after global warming. Our time was known as the nuclear drain, but that is unimportant now. All the memory of when stars began to fall and when gravity imploded means nothing in the time here and now. One of the crew rushed into the cabin and shouted, "Captain Lara, come quick!" I jumped to my feet and ran after him. A large ship out on the ocean had spotted some of us on the island and had turned around and changed course. It was now making its way to the island. I asked everyone to disguise the ship with trees and vegetation and strip down into basic clothing. We had to work fast, and I had to think fast. As the large ship docked in the ocean, a small boat made its way over to the island. The captain approached me and I reached out my hand to him. Hello, is everything okay?" I asked. The captain replied, Yeah, I thought this island was deserted. One of my crew noticed signs of life. That's when we turned around." I said, I hope you can keep it a secret. We're making a new movie about a crew that was shipwrecked here, and we're almost finished. So I'd appreciate if you could let us continue uninterrupted. The light's fading and we have a deadline to meet." The captain smiled and he said, No problem. Sorry to have disturbed you." They returned back to their small wooden boat and left us alone again on the island. Most of those who stood there gave us a sigh of relief. Fizz, one of my crew, looked puzzled and he said, "Captain Lara, how do you know about those things?" I smiled and replied, "Oh, well, I know about history, and that's one of the reasons I was chosen to be your leader on Noah 2. Fizz continued, "What's a movie, sir?" I replied, "Well, natural light was in plentiful supply on Earth. People made movies. There are images of stories and imagination with sound, usually based on fact. These stories were written down and acted out by people known as actors. These recordings were made on a device called a camera. The product of this stored images and then projected them for people to watch. They called it entertainment from the beginning of the 20th century until global warming had done its damage, and then, as Earth's light began to fade and fail, it was impossible to make any more movies." Fizz said, "So is that when mind and psych implanting came into being?" "That's right, which reminds me. I am in the middle of something, so if you could get on with tasks I assigned you to, I will resume my mind-implanted disc recording." I pulled off some vegetation from the front hatch and returned to my cabin and took up where I had left off. Sitting back in my chair, I switched on the sequencer power drive to my mind implanter and started to think aloud. Sitting back in my chair, I switched on the sequencer power drive to my mind implanter and started to think aloud. Now, for the purpose of history, and for anyone else who finds this and decodes my message, there and here are the events of our journey on Noah 2. My mind's eye opened and the pictures streamed onto the disc. My thoughts gouged themselves across the implanter. At the dawn of the first nuclear drain, when solar transport had been exhausted, the first methods of novatronic-powered transport was introduced. Novatronic energy was fantastic, and everyone embraced this new and exciting resource. We had discovered a way to harness celestial power from the stars, and it was the answer to all our worries. Then suddenly it all went wrong. The dark spot on the sun began to appear and issued its final notice to the novatronic age. The first star fell and the dark shade on the sun began to grow. Too late to stop the inevitable. It was now too late to remove what we had dumped. All that nuclear waste we had previously dumped in the galaxy had returned a debt to us. It was too late to repair the damage we had done to the sun. Our only energy source left was almost gone. After the first 6 nuclear ages, we had discovered we could dump our nuclear waste in outer space. We were foolish to think it would never have an effect on us, but as time went by and the sun got darker, we realized that the end of humankind was ever near. Our time as the living species was running out. The stars had already begun to fall, and the sun was now just a blot in the sky. We had created these radioactive wastelands in outer space. We had destroyed not only the Earth, but now fusions and reactions were taking place in outer space. The end to the 7th nuclear age was one of uncontrollable mass panic. People went to war, and there were a trail of destruction over the entire planet as people lost control. It seemed futile to carry on, but thank God many people still held on to ideals and kindness. When the sun had almost gone, some people started to dig their own graves and waited for the end to come. The millions of people that were now left on the planet had given up hope. In a last-ditch attempt to come up with a solution, the last Earth's novatronic scientists had gathered together with the leaders of all nations in an underground complex called Silver City. I was one of the scientists who believed that we can continue with our human existence. It was a long shot, but it was one that we had, the only one we had. Radiation in reverse was only a theory, but I had experimented its properties during the early novatronic research. I had a multi-layered Puzzy neutron device encased inside a series of novatronic gridlocks. When this accidentally exploded, I had created an implosion of vortex that pulled in radiation waves back on itself. Now, this project was termed radiation in reverse. It was my belief that of the other scientists, maybe we could adapt that energy into a nuclear transference. We began to build the radiation fuel grids, and our plan was to escape the solar system in Noah 2. Then, New Hope had begun. Noah 2 was the first of its kind, a radiation in reverse rocket with only enough room for 144 passengers. The crew of castaways was to leave our solar system and hopefully find a suitable planet that could sustain human life. With this recyclable fuel, the Noah 2 would have the ability to travel around the universe for at least the next 3 generations. The next task was to choose the place where we were to go. So from a selected ballot, a list of people from each country began to be chosen from a computer system, and data was processed. The captain and the crew of Noah 2 had been picked. I was lucky to be the first person chosen. After myself, there had to be 2 members of every culture, and they were to be made up of highly skilled builders and farmers. There had to be religious, there had to be teachers, scientists, artists, musicians and poets, doctors and young children from all walks of life. We needed the essence of humankind on board Noah 2. After the people were chosen, another list was made up. This list was to include animals, wild and tame, books and antiques, miracle drugs, and the most important remaining, in vitro fertilization programs, and mind and psych implant devices. Soon the day came, and Noah 2 was ready to depart. All the hatches were shut tight, and the countdown began. The roof of Silver City opened up, and as it did, a deadly red mist fell down upon all those in Silver City. We never knew the fate of those we had left behind. Noah 2 shot into the shaded sky at a speed before reached, never seen. The rocket ship of ours, in seconds of time, was shot through into a shaded sky, and we could only see what was left of the planet Earth. Outside the portholes of Noah 2, all we could see was a tiny blue ball appear and then disappear out of sight, all eyes turned away. And there were a few moments' silence. There, and then, silence was shattered by banging and heavy thuds. Outside the Noah 2, huge meteors were bombarding the ship. We were inside a meteor storm, and Noah 2 was being thrown around in space. Fireballs were being rushed past the porthole windows. We were in a bad way, and some went frantic in fear. It looked like the first human pioneers were about to be destroyed, when suddenly a bright light appeared above Noah 2. A strange force field was protecting the ship and its crew from destruction. All the instruments on board Noah 2 ceased to function, and the nuclear transference main drive engines were cut. All thrusters and side props went in reverse as Noah 2 changed its course. It was as if the ship was being controlled by some outside intelligence. On board I saw and spoke to some family and friends who had died years before. In the brilliant white light I was told not to worry. There was a beautiful sensation of peace in this light. As the white light around us left, I saw what looked like a tunnel of flowing lights. Up ahead, Noah 2 was pulled along what looked like a road with coloured lights running along through the centre of the galaxy. We were pulled down this road in the grip of some outside force. Now the Noah 2 was in an unknown part of the galaxy where time itself had stopped. The crew and myself were frozen and suspended, and yet every one of us were aware of what was happening. Our ship approached a landing area where lights flickered and music played all around the Noah 2 as it came to a stop. Human life forms came to greet us. We were unable to move or speak. Our minds were being opened up by these supernatural beings that floated above the ground. They explained about the bright light, which was the 4th dimension, where we could communicate with beings from the spirit world. They explained about where we were now and how the 5th dimension was a parallel universe to our very own. They were able to answer all our questions, and in this dimension they could repair the damage done to our universe. They had watched how we dumped nuclear waste, and for a long time they saw the balance of our world shift. They told us about dimensional time and how, when we returned, things would be different. It was explained how we could save the human race from destruction, but we had to return to a time before the nuclear wastelands were developed. It was up to us now to change the future by living in the past. Now we are like them, watching the planet and controlling the future with the knowledge we have been given. The power is in our own hands, and we have a job to do. So for the sake of the entire human race and for the benefit of the planet Earth, we, the pioneers of Noah 2, have been shown the new path, and it is a way we must show others. A knock came to the cabin door. "Captain Lara," We all have what you asked for. I pulled off the image and voice sensors from my temples and opened the door. Then let's get to work, I said. With the seeds and the chemicals we were given by those in the fifth dimension, we planted and coated the first of the Earth's plants and marine life. New trees and life forms grew immediately. Life on Earth was changing before our very eyes. Now, there were new fish that swam through the oceans, and what a difference we had already made. But there was still so much to do to prevent the first signs of global warming. There were 144 of us, and we all had been given specific jobs to complete on Earth. After a number of years, salvation was found and humankind grew into perfection. As a species, we stood on new ground, and people all over the world had a new life to live and to love. The end.